And now to help introduce, here he is, coming in by parachute.
Apus.
See the clown.
To audience.
This is just a quick reminder, a quick notice, declaring that I have not forgotten about Mohammed Hijab.
You're obviously getting triggered.
Then he had this ambush with me where his friends invited me to a podcast and then he appeared there trying to have a childish fight with me.
Look, everybody, I'm the same person I always was. Get in!
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Islamic Defense podcast. So, someone actually told me to make these refutations to this video of Apostate Prophet and his thoughts on interfaith marriage. So, I originally wanted to make another video, but I figured that why not? Yeah, by the way, before we get started, if you guys like this channel and you want to support me, then please do consider becoming a Patreon. Inshallah, I will post the link in the description. And since you guys know I don't monetize my videos, so that will actually help me a lot. So yeah, let's get to the video and let's see what Apostate Prophet has to say in regards to interfaith marriage.
A Muslim man is not allowed to marry a woman who is not a Muslim, not a Christian, not a Jew, like an atheist or a Hindu, for example. The Quran makes that very clear in its typical language. And do not marry idolatresses till they believe in Islam. And indeed, a slave woman who believes is better than an idolatress, even though she pleases you. The idolatress here is a general word for the pre-Islamic pagans, but also other polytheists and people who don't follow Islam, Christianity or Judaism. The premise is basically that Christians and Jews are still kind of monotheists who believe in the one God in a way, but others are enemies of Islam and filthy by the Quran's definition, and therefore forbidden.
Okay, this is a lie. Nowhere does it say that you cannot marry pagan women because they're filthy. What the verse says is,
ولا تنكحوا المشركات حتى يؤمن ولأمة مؤمنة خير من مشركة ولو أعجبتكم ولا تنكحوا المشركين حتى يؤمنوا ولعبد مؤمن خير من مشرك ولو أعجبكم أولئك يدعون إلى النار والله يدعو إلى الجنة والمغفرة بإذنه ويبين آياته للناس لعلهم يتذكرون.
do not marry polytheistic women until they believe, for a believing slave woman is better than a free polytheist woman, even though she may look pleasant to you. And do not marry your woman to polytheistic man until they believe, for a believing slave man is better than a free polytheist, even though he may look pleasant to you. They invite you to the fire, while Allah invites you to paradise and forgiveness by His grace. So this verse is saying that do not marry pagans because they will likely invite you to the fire. And now, according to Ibn Kathir, these mushrikun invite you to the fire, meaning associating and mingling with disbelievers like this makes one's love this life and prefer it over the hereafter, leading to the severest repercussion. So basically what this means is that the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us not to marry polytheistic woman or polytheistic man is because there's a chance that that might lead to hellfire. That mingling with them or going along with them could influence us to turn away from Islam and become more addicted to their religion, or turning away from our own religion. So that's the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to not marry these people. Not because pagans are filthy. So Apostate Prophet actually lied on this verse. Nowhere in the Quran does it say that you cannot marry these women because they're filthy. It doesn't say that. So this is a lie. Also, not just that, according to many peer-reviewed research studies, marriage between different religions with too much differences can actually lead to an unhappy marriage. There is one study in Sage Journal by Professor of Sociology Susan T. Ortega, I think her name is, says in the abstract of her research paper, this measure was used to test the hypothesis that the larger the religious distance or disparity, the greater the likelihood of unhappiness with the marriage. The hypothesis was supported by the data. So basically what the paper said is that the larger the religious similarity between you and your wife, the happier you guys will be. And the less similarity you guys have in terms of religion, the less happy you will be. So basically this study proves that religion is very important in your marriage life. So for example, if you marry if interfaith marriage happen and your partner does not have that much similarity when it comes to religion, then that could actually lead to an unhappy married life. That's basically what the study shows. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is absolutely right in banning marriage between Muslim and pagans, because Muslims have very little similarities to pagans in terms of religion, where at least with Christians and Jews there are some similarities. So let me put this argument in a logical form. Premise 1. According to the research paper by Professor Susan, religious similarities lead to happier marriage, and these similarities leads to unhappy marriage. Premise 2. There are too many dissimilarities with Muslims and pagans in terms of religion. Conclusion. Therefore, by banning marriage between Muslims and pagans, Islam may lead to more happier marriage and happier couples. This shows why Quran is the word of God. Because why would the Prophet ban marriage between pagans and Muslims? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, from a political point of view, it definitely doesn't make any sense. And he actually has no reason to do that. So he also couldn't have known the fact that marriage between a Muslim couple or marriage between a couple that has little to no religious similarities could lead to unhappiness. He couldn't have known that without doing any type of research. So this shows that this commandment must have come from God, because how else would the Prophet know this? Since God would be the only one who would know this. So this proves that why Quran is the word of God. So good job, Apus. You actually proved why Quran is the word of God. But anyway, regardless, let's continue.
When we come to Muslim women, however, it's different. Although a Muslim man can go and get himself a wife from outside his own faith, a Muslim woman can never marry anyone who is not a Muslim. About marrying unbelievers, the Quran uses very sweet words again and makes clear that no Muslim woman can be owned by a non-believer. She can only be the property of a Muslim man. So a Muslim woman can't marry a Christian or a Jewish man, although the Quran gives the man the privilege to marry Jewish or Christian women. This also shows that Islam is a political, a male supremacist system that is far beyond sweet tolerance talks that annoying activists present to you.
Here he's committing the fallacy of composition. Basically, he is taking one law from the Islamic jurisprudence and saying, since this law prefers man over woman, therefore Islamic jurisprudence as a whole prefers man over woman. However, just because this law in particular prefers man over woman does not mean that Islamic jurisprudence as a whole prefer man over woman. It's a fallacy. So basically he's generalizing, because there are many laws where woman is preferred over man in Islam. For example, in the case of divorce and child custody. In cases of divorce, if all things are equal, what actually happens is that a woman is actually preferred over a man when it comes to taking custody of your child. If all things are equal, it doesn't matter how wealthy the husband is, the mother always gets the child. For example, there's a beautiful hadith that demonstrates this really well. Sheikh Saleh Al-Fawzan, in his book Tashil Al-Ilmam, Sharh Bulugh Al-Maram, which is a commentary on Bulugh Al-Maram by Sheikh Ibn Hajar Al-Asqalani, he said in that book that in this commentary he quoted a hadith to explain the importance of divorced mother and her right to her child over her husband. The hadith says, a woman said, "O Allah's Messenger, this son is mine. My womb was a receptacle for him, my breasts were a source of suckling for him, and my lap was a place for him to curl up in. Yet his father has divorced me and wants to take him away from me." Allah's Messenger ﷺ replied to her, "You have more right to him as long as you do not marry." This hadith has been reported by Ahmed and Abu Dawud, and Al-Hakim regarded this hadith as sahih or authentic. You can read about this in Bulugh Al-Maram, the book of Marrige, book number 8, hadith number 260. But regardless, let me put the argument in logical form. Premise 1. According to Apostate Prophet's theory, Islam is a sexist religion because it has a law that prefers man over woman. Premise 2. If we find any evidence that contradicts this theory, it will be proven false. Premise 3. We see that in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in Bulugh Al-Maram 216, when it comes to laws of divorce and child custody, Islam prefers woman over a man, which contradicts Apostate Prophet's theory. Conclusion. Therefore, Apostate Prophet's theory about Islam being a sexist religion is proven false. You know what's funny? In America and in many Western countries, they have this thing called social services. So in case you guys know, social services are basically a government organizations that keeps track of how parents, I mean, they do a lot of things, but one of the things that they do is that they keep track of whether a parent is raising a child properly or not. The job of a social service worker is in many cases making sure that the parents are capable of taking care of their child. If a social worker thinks that the parents cannot take care of the child, then they can literally, and I kid you not, they can literally separate a mother from her child. They have the power to do that. The government has the power to do that. Now, there is one article in the conversation titled "Losing Children to Foster Care Endangers Mothers' Lives." It is written by a PhD student in community health sciences, University of Manitoba, named Elizabeth Wall-Weller. In her article, she basically explained very well, and she cited a research which shows that losing a child to foster care often leads to depression and suicide among young mothers. The article says, the first study published in the Canadian Journal of Psychiatry looked at suicide attempts and suicide completion among mothers whose children were placed in foster care. In this study, we compared rates of suicide attempts and suicides between 1,872 mothers who had a child placed in foster care with sisters whose children was not placed in foster care. We found that the rate of suicide attempts was 2.82 times higher, and the rate of death by suicide was more than 4 times higher for mothers whose children were not in their custody. So what the study showed is that suicide among mothers whose child was taken away from them had a higher risk of committing suicide than those whose child was not taken, obviously. Because these kind of things will obviously lead to depression. I mean, what do you do if your child is taken away from you? Another study published in Oxford Academic Journal, the British Journal of Social Work, showed that young mothers in Western countries are in high risk of having their child taken away from them repeatedly. So not just one time, multiple times. The study showed from 2007 to 2014 that nearly 43,000 mothers lost their child forcibly by the order of the UK court. They also cited other research that also showed similar things being done in Canada, US, and also other Western countries. This is also a common phenomenon in most Western countries. I mean, why is it that Ridvan is okay with that? I mean, his country is literally, in his country, thousands of mothers are being separated from their child, and yet he's completely fine with that. But he has an issue with Islam not allowing marriage between different religions. What? The thing is that under Sharia law, something like this would never be allowed, because Prophet ﷺ said, whoever separates between a mother and her child, then Allah will separate between him and his beloved on the day of judgment. Abu Isa said, there is something on this topic from Ali. This hadith is Hasan Garib. This is acted upon according to the people of knowledge among the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and others. They disliked separating the captives, the mother and her child, the son and the father and brothers. You can read about this in Jami al-Tirmidhi 1566. This hadith is Hasan or fair according to Sheikh Albani. So what this hadith shows is that it's haram or forbidden for Muslims to separate a mother from her child or a family. If there's a family unit, that family must be protected. No one has the right to separate their family. I mean, why should a government entity should have the power to decide whether you can have a child or not? That's absurd. I mean, no government in the world should have the power to do that. But in Western secularism, it's completely fine. Now, some may say that, well, these mothers cannot take care of the child, they're drug addicts, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine, fair point. Then help them. Why aren't you helping them? I mean, instead of helping them, you're making things worse. Now, you decide for yourself what is better. Western secularism, which allows a mother to be separated from her child, or Islam, which doesn't allow a mother to be separated from her child. You decide for yourself. Regardless, I'm done with this video. I'm done with this clown. Thank you guys for watching. If you like the video, please do consider supporting me on Patreon. The link will be in the description, inshallah. So with that, I'm going to end the video. Jazakallahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.